Thank you very much for this kind introduction from the International Secretary of SPD Germany and of course Coordinator of Progressive Alliance, our good comrade Mr. Konstantin Wojnov, the leaders of the Democratic Action Party of Malaysia, and of course the international delegates from the Progressive Alliance from 40 countries. First, let me welcome all of you warmly in the typical Malaysian manner. Selamat datang ke Kuala Lumpur, which is of course a very warm welcome to our comrades. I wouldn't want to use the word comrades in arms, but I think comrades in the struggle for not just, of course, the working class, but for humanity throughout the world. Now, I want to thank Progressive Alliance, of course, and of course our dear friend from Sweden, Johan Hessel, for bringing us together under the auspices of celebrating social democracy throughout the world. Now, it is remarkable that in this room we have so much linguistic diversity and cultural differences, and of course representatives from 40 countries, but we are all united by this commonality of striving for a better future for our respective populations. Now, this democratic struggle is our common denominator, and of course the pains, trials and tribulations is probably our shared language. We may not understand each other, but I'm sure we understand the pains, the trials and tribulations that we have to go through. Now, for Malaysia, we are no exception. DAP was established over 53 years ago. And in that 53-year period, we were seen as a perennial opposition. And that feeling was so entrenched that no one in their right mind would ever dream of the DAP winning power, not just at the federal level, but even at the state level. So somehow it was ingrained that we were a permanent, perennial opposition. And in fact, we excelled in our role as an opposition. So much so that our leaders were natural opposition leaders in parliament. And we played our role very well, checks and balances, until, of course, a newer, younger generation of leaders wanted to take up the cudgel and the challenge of turning probably over 35 years of the orthodox thinking that DAP would be a permanent opposition by making a bold bid for power, transforming into reality the vision of our founders. Of course, one of them is Saudara Lim Guan Eng. I do not know whether you have met him. He is the conscience and the spirit of the party. And when we started this process, coincidentally, under my leadership as a Secretary General, we managed to break through this mental block, and in 2008, for the first time, we won power at the state level in the industrial state of Penang. And I was appointed as the Penang Chief Minister, and we managed to transform what was seen as a state in a state of graceful and gradual decline, managed to turn it around to its former vibrant and dynamic self. And of course, Penang is one of the success stories, as mentioned by Konstantin when he visited Penang, where not only can we see prosperity, but also shared prosperity. And the results of these efforts of good governance and clean leadership, together with a competent, forward-looking policies, have allowed the state to enjoy success. And of course, Social Democrats are very good at distributing the results of this success. And that is why for the two subsequent elections, we not only won again and again, but with larger and larger majorities. So at one time, we had only one state legislative member in a state assembly out of 14 members. But now, through our coalition and because of this good governance, we have expanded to 37 out of 40. So the opposition is reduced to what we were previously. So this turnaround could only be possible because we never lose sight. We never lose sight that we have to implement people-centric policies. And when we talk about people-centric policies, it always comes back to basics. And that means jobs. That means economic growth. That means social welfare program has a form of safety nets. That means, of course, environmental protection. And finally, most important of all, health, reasonable health protection for the masses, and human dignity, respect for human dignity for all. But these are our traditional values. This has been part of the credo of social democratic movements all over. And of course, I was brought up in that type of environment where we already talk about agitating for change, ensuring that everyone has their fair share, without so much emphasis on growing that share. But when we took power, we felt very strongly that we have to ensure that the economy grows sustainably, win the confidence of the business sector, and that after achieving these results, then we talk about distribution. I think we managed to achieve that within a term, and of course, subsequently expanded the entire model to be as inclusive as possible. But winning the federal government is very, very different from running a state government. In a state government, you can do some micromanagement. When you run a federal government, the context, the platform, the entire framework is so much larger. You cannot micromanage as we have done before. And it is always critical that you have the right policies. Not only you must have the right policies, that you must do it right to ensure that the change you want to see can be effected. And that is one of our greatest challenge, because this is the first time that we have won power in 61 years. The civil service is still beholden to the previous administration. And of course, we have to work very hard to ensure that the programs can be implemented. And I think as a social democratic movement, our emphasis should be about action. Optimism in action more than any pessimism in ideas and intellect. I'm not quoting Antonio Gramsci, of course. But I think it's very important that we act. If I can say that when we were in opposition, it was more 90% planning, 10% execution. But when you are in government, execution is everything. It is 90% execution, 10% planning. Because you can pontificate, you can espouse theories and ideas, But if it cannot be implemented and it cannot work, or you cannot ensure delivery, at the end of the day, it means nothing. And I think that is something that I would like to share, that this is a huge challenge that we are grappling with, to ensure that policies that we have crafted are able to be delivered. We are still struggling with that, and of course there's no holy script, or there's no golden rule how to get it done. We got to look at it pragmatically, taking into account the practicalities and circumstances of the day. Now, having said that, we must also not ignore the future trends, because social democratic movements should not be looking back into the past. We should try to peer into the future. We always say that social democratic parties are a natural refuge for the young. But to be a natural refuge for the young, you must be able to predict future trends. And that is why, has a political movement, has a government, we try to prepare the future for the young. As a political movement, we want to prepare the young for the future. And of course, when you talk about the future, nothing matters most than digitalization. As we move towards the digital age, we must embrace it. It is not to be resisted, and try as much as possible to master it. Now, whilst digitalization is welcome, it is not without its challenges. Digitalization and other associated Industry 4.0 trends like automation, analytics, and artificial intelligence are disrupting the existing economy, creating a lot of winners, but also many losers. It is the role of the government to ensure that the losers are aided in transitioning into the new economy. One very important disruption revolves around job losses. Social democratic movements, one of the key benchmarks is job creation. And of course, increasing real wages and purchasing power. Now, but when you look at the digital age, there is a fear of job losses. And you can see that the rise of the far right and nationalist movement is a reaction to these job losses already happening around us. We hope that the technological disruption will not destroy jobs, but the World Economic Forum estimates that about 75 million jobs will be displaced globally by a shift in the division of labor between humans and machines, while 133 million new roles may emerge that are more adapted to the new division of labor between humans, machines, and algorithms by 2022. But even that number of 133 million may not be enough for the 75 million job losses, because the 133 million new jobs created will be for the younger generation, who are adept at the latest digital and technological advances. What do we do with the 75 million jobs which are lost? And this is our challenge. If we can find an answer to this, or even you can have half an answer, I think the future for the social democratic movement will be very bright throughout the world. One way of addressing this, of course, is by reskilling, upskilling, as well as retraining those elbowed out of the labor market to fill new jobs for new sectors that still requires a human presence to operate. However, such reskilling exercise could be costly and we require a public and private sector partnership to make this happen. Governments alone would not be able to foot the bill for reskilling programs, nor are they equipped with the comprehensive experience and infrastructure for an effective outcome. Now we are pursuing shared prosperity. But to make sure that this prosperity can be sustained, we want also to establish an entrepreneurial economy. An entrepreneurial economy based on partnership between the public sector, the private sector, professionals, and of course the people to get public buy-in. A 4P partnership, where the government should not be dishing out grants per se, but should match grants with the private sector as well as the professionals in order to gain maximum efficiency and outcomes. And in the future digital economy, which is expected to bring about dislocation and even disappearance of existing jobs, with the hope that it will be replaced by new jobs brought about by the new technological revolution, a nature and consequence of creative destruction. Whilst some may say this creative destruction is an unavoidable consequence of new technology, such creative destruction is neither politically, economically, nor socially tenable. We reject that creative destruction is good for you. No. Unless, of course, you can replace the jobs lost. Any so-called creative destruction brought about by the onset of the digital economy that leads to social upheaval will be rejected, I'm sure, by all political movements. Instead of creative destruction, the Malaysian government prefers to look at the challenges of the digital economy, resulting in job losses as a form of digital disruption that can and must be contained. We are considering to provide income supplements or incentives to encourage employers to employ workers who cannot find jobs so that they can enjoy a living wage to mitigate the negative impact of digital disruption. Digital taxes or benefits from economic growth brought about by the new digital economy must sustain part of the old economy so that we can engineer a gentler, softer, and kinder landing. In short, the digital economy need not be a threat if a softer, gentler, and kinder approach can be effected to embrace its benefits. Whilst we embrace the emergence of digital economy, again, any form of disruption must be creative and sustainable, and we hope will fulfill the requirements of 3 A's. It must be available, it must be accessible, and of course, finally, it must be affordable. In any digital economy that is not available, accessible, and affordable, we are not being fair. We do not fulfill our role as a people-centric government or political movement. I've got a very long speech here. I do not wish to probably expand, but of course I think touching on the key tenets of social democratic movements, which is basically jobs, living wage, keeping the family together, protecting the environment. I think these are key issues that matters to us closely. But I just want to again emphasize the importance of winning the business sector over. That we can be concerned about the environment, but yet you can also earn profits. We put people ahead of profits, but it is only by doing so that you can ensure larger and sustainable profits in future. Until and unless you win the business community over, I think we will face challenges and may spend more time in opposition than in government. That is why I would like to suggest this 4P partnership. Public sector, private sector, professionals, and the people. So that the social democratic movement broadens our appeal to these sectors. We tried that out in Penang. It worked very well. As we said, we have reduced the opposition to a rump, but you are looking at a very different ball game at the national level. So, in summary, let us appeal for solidarity towards diversity, social harmony, rule of law, political freedoms, equal opportunity, environmental protection, good governance, and a clean leadership. If we can maintain these values, your time will come. And as is been stated by Victor Hugo, no power on earth can stop an idea whose moment has come. And your moment will be here. Thank you very much.